Kevin Forward from OSPRI, head of NAIT, is going to join us. A Waikato farmer has been fined nearly $3,000 for not registering 152 cattle under the NAIT scheme. That's the National Animal Identification and Tracing Scheme. Recent amendments to penalties in the NAIT Act, which increased the maximum penalty to $100,000, were recently introduced. I'd love to get a bit of a reflection on the scheme, seeming to have to use a stick rather than a carrot. Is the tightening up on compliance necessary? We are joined now, Head of NAIT, Kevin Forward. Good evening, Kevin. Thank you so much. Our audience certainly enjoy when you join the program to take your questions and find out, because NAIT is an evolving thing. Question to set the scene. Pre-Bovis to now, how is farmers' behaviour around compliance of tagging?
Good evening, Sarah, and thanks for having me back. Really great to be back on the show. Look, when we look at tagging and registering, the statistic that we collect is basically on animal registrations. I've actually got them up in front of me right now, so sorry for looking to the right. But 2016, 2017, the 45% of animals were registered prior to that movement off farm. For the same period in 2020, we've now got that up to 77% of animals, so massive improvement. And that's really happened, unfortunately, since MPI started the issuing of infringement notices and the prosecutions. It's a bit disappointing we're having to use the stick to actually get a message home, but it is actually having a really good effect in regards to compliance.
Okay, so we're talking about the Waikato farmer that on social media, when the story circulated, there was many farmers that were commenting, well, we assume on social media, but that this is not high enough for this failing to register 152 cattle. Has there been a change in sort of sentiment around everybody collectively doing our best for biosecurity?
Well, I think there's definitely been a strong change in sentiment from farmers. Those that are complying are really sick and tired of those people that are letting the industry down. It's definitely something that came out since I joined OSPRI in 2018 at the end of the NAIT review and the implementation of the amendments to the Act. Farmers were saying to us, look, you need to get tough on this. You're going to have to start using the stick. The $3,900 for the Waikato farmer, I'm not too sure because I haven't seen the sentencing report as yet, but I know for the other two farmers that's a discounted impact. So basically the sentencing judge starts off high and then you get sentencing discounts for early pleas guilty. They're all of the three successful prosecutions at this point in time relate to offences committed in 2019, so they apply to the maximum $10,000 infringement. None of these three that have gone through the courts at the moment relate to the $10,000 per animal up to $100,000 for an individual, and for companies up to $20,000 per animal up to $200,000.
Now, I've just want to say to our audience who are watching live, while we've got Kevin Forward here, please feel free to ask your comments in the questions below, anything to do with your NAIT compliance, because a lot of people are still continuously getting their head around it for all different reasons. Why, Kevin? I mean, they may have just got back into the industry, lifestyle blocks, new developments as sort of deer has come into the board and sheep. So whereabouts are you seeing the biggest holes come, especially particularly mid-calving, that you want to get that strong message out there?
Look, mid-calving, I was really, really shocked today when I got an email for non-compliance to calving sales in the Central North Island. More than 50% of the calves arrived unregistered at those sales, and that was this week. That's really, really shocking. And we're talking that's probably around 600-700 calves across two sales arrived unregistered. So the big emphasis at the moment during calving is to make sure that your calves are tagged and registered before they leave. If you're buying calves, make sure you speak to if you're buying them direct from the farm, that you speak to the picker at that location. Make sure that they're tagged before they're moved. Make sure you've got an animal status declaration, and make sure the movement's recorded. If they're going to sale yards, you just need to make sure they're tagged and registered, and the sale yard will do a one-legged movement, and make sure your ASD forms are all complete and up to date. If you've using a livestock transporter, there's that new declaration that's come in. If you want to make it nice and speedy with no hassles, pull out that declaration so that your transport operator can pick them up and get them off.
There's an assumption when it comes to how they arrived, but the penalties and the enforcement of those penalties with the changes of the PICA, person in charge of animals, how much emphasis and the stick is swinging at transport companies?
The change to the Act.
We've lost Kevin's audio. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So with the transport operators, the problem that we have with them, well, it's not really a problem. The change to the Act put a requirement for anybody who was transporting NAIT animals to check they're fitted with a prescribed NAIT device. Now, that doesn't matter whether you're a calf rearer going to pick some calves up from a farm or whether you're a livestock transporter. A livestock transporter, though, can ask a picker to provide a declaration that all animals are tagged and registered in accordance with the NAIT Act, and that exempts them from their obligation to check that all of the animals are fitted with a prescribed NAIT device. So basically the transport industry have said, look, it's not our responsibility to police the NAIT scheme. They negotiated with the select committee around getting that exemption in there, and they've pushed it back on the farmer to say, it's your responsibility to actually make sure your animals are tagged and registered. We're not going to transport them unless you give us a declaration which exempts us from that obligation in the Act. So it's an interesting situation.
It's an interesting hole you have that can leak through your water pipe in your system, Kevin, when there's a huge part of the transport of animals around this country.
Look, I don't think anybody's going to disagree that when we're looking at the spread of animal-based diseases, that the transport industry is a crucial link in any traceability scheme. But I have to work with the Act and what I'm given and the tools that we're given there. Obviously, the Minister had a very strong view that the transport industry needed to play a role, and he took that.
Kevin's audio has just dropped out.
Still? To Parliament. The Select Committee process and our legislative process worked around that, and we've got what we've got to deal with. Okay,
so let's talk about sale yards and the acceptance of untagged animals and the transaction of farm-to-farm sales with agents. And I know I spoke to a lot of agents over the early days around NAIT being, and the lack of compliance, and them throwing their hands in the air as well.
Farm-to-farm sales are always difficult in regards to... Can you...
Yes, I can. Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, farm-to-farm sales are always difficult to police. The agents often are acting as a broker, and it becomes a transaction then between two farmers. We believe that the brokers have a responsibility to ensure that the information is passing accurately between the two farms, and that's the discussion that we're having with stock and station agents at the moment around the country. But the responsibility for recording those NAIT movements does sit with the two farmers. I just want to say, though, with the changes that we've got in place, it's really easy for us now to pick up.
It's all right, Kevin, we're going to bear with you because I've got a few questions. I'm going to bear with you with this because we've got a few questions to put to you as well. Yep. So
we basically run a report. You look at that fail to register. Every 2 weeks we run an automatic report which goes across the MPI compliance team of every animal that has been failed to register in the country. And at the moment, that's tens of thousands. MPI have got an extra 7 biosecurity officers sitting on that infringement desk now, who started recently, who are focusing just on those infringements. So, this is an area that farmers really need to sort of focus on and make sure that they're doing it right. It's the start of the traceability of lifetime traceability for an animal. Tag and register, record the movement.
Right. Things are going to ramp up. I've got a few questions here. Chris would like to know, when are you doing your next upgrade to the system, and what are the main changes to be included in this upgrade? And then I have another. So that one question.
Yep. So our IT team are currently working on development and change to the system. It is a brand new system. We're looking at just trying to update the user interface, but it actually worked out that the old NAIT system that we've got, which was developed in 2012, to actually just replace that user interface was going to take just as long and cost just as much as replacing the whole system. So the board has gone down the path of replacing the whole system. That's going to start off with the first function that comes out of the new system is actually an electronic animal status declaration. And that's looking at full functionality, and then over time we'll get to basically the whole system being fully replaced. But that's a 2 to 3 year time frame. It's not going to be happening overnight, so I do have to ask that farmers do bear with us as much as possible with that.
That's good to
We
hear.
will be looking at some other options to try and make it easier, but that's still in the pipeline.
Very good to hear, Kevin. Very, very good to hear. And I'd hate to see what the price tag on that will be, but it is a necessity, those changes, and with the EASD involved as well. Paul would like to know, what's the testing requirements for new season calves from dairy herds in the Hawke's Bay TB control zone prior to movement?
So he's got me there in an area that's not my area of expertise, which I assume he's referring to TB testing. Look, Paul, I can't tell you that off the top of my head, but what I will do is I'll get that information, we'll get it posted onto the Facebook page as a response. I don't want to put him wrong, but it's not my area of expertise, I'm afraid.
Fantastic. So, Paul, Kevin is the head of NAIT specifically, I know from OSPRI, but particularly we're talking about animal identification and tracing at the moment. What education programs are you running for lifestyle blocks?
Lifestyle blocks? We've just been through a restructure now at OSPRI, and we've got these 3 new regions as part of our regional model, each with a general manager. We are working with our regional partners, so we've now got 15 regional partners across the country. Some of them we're still just recruiting to those positions to focus on the education. We have linked in with Lifestyler magazines, and there's an online Lifestyler website where we've got promotional and educational activities and information on those. And we're working with our OSPRI committees, federated farmers, and obviously dairy and beef and lamb and dairy industry to target where we can get them, those sort of educational workshops into lifestylers. What we are seeing when we look at NAIT registration is that we've still got over 10,000 NAIT locations with less than 20 animals recorded on them, what we term as a lifestyle block, yet to be re-registered. So that is a big emphasis for us moving forward, to make sure that everybody, doesn't matter whether you have 1 NAIT animal or 1,000 NAIT animals, you understand that you still have to meet the same obligations.
That sounds like a huge challenge. I was just sort of starting to think around Jacinda Ardern's key messaging. Super simple. Say yes to the test. How can we get some say no to the untag, or to something that we can get out there? Just a simple messaging to be like, yep. That lifestyle blocks people can get their head around. That's simple, because a lot of lifestyle block people don't believe that it applies to them. A lot of the general wider farming discussions. So we've got a lot of work still to do. 10,000.
What I'm definitely seeing coming from a lot of our commercial farmers is they're getting really concerned about lifestyle blocks that are bordering onto their farms, particularly on the back of Bovis, but obviously with TB as well. What they're doing is they're actually starting to notify us, hey, we've got a lifestyle farmer next door to us and none of those animals are tagged, they're not doing TB testing, someone needs to get in and do something about it. So we're acting quite aggressively around that. I had one today referred it straight into the NAIT investigation team over at MPI, because I've got a bit of a zero tolerance to it. Some of them, 3, 4, 5 years, we've put out a lot of information that this applies to everybody. So, if we are getting those reports, not really much sympathy coming from me in that space.
Good to hear. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Kevin Forward, head of NAIT at OSPRI, discussing there around the coming in swinging with the stick, because of course everybody's had their time to understand and get their head around the importance of identifying and tagging and registering your animals with NAIT. If you've got any concerns or questions, please go to the team at NAIT at OSPRI, and they'll be able to help you.
This is Sarah's Country.